Hello, it's Mr. Rio here in the studio today, Wednesday, February 24th already. And this week, one of the things we're doing in sociology is taking our chapter 2 test. Because class time is so precious, we don't have a lot of it. I've been trying to do as much as I can of your other assignments in class. Quite frankly, it saves you having to do it outside of class. Plus, I think we can do it better in class together. So, what I'm going to do today is do the test review that I didn't want to take a big chunk of class time to do. Now, I do realize that the tests are, you can use your notes, but I still feel the need to review them and talk about them more than I have already. I've talked about them a little bit in past Zoom sessions and or in class, but not a lot. So let's, without further ado, let's do the test review. I'm sharing my screen now. Okay, here are the notes from the chapter 2 test. Also, what I'm going to do today, I put that the test was coming out Thursday morning. I'm actually going to put it together and post it here as soon as I can after this Zoom session. So if anybody wants to get an early start today on it, it should be posted, let's see, probably by 10:30 or thereabout. So you get an extra day to get working on if you want to. Chapter 2 is cultural diversity and conformity. So we'll start with the meaning of culture. Culture is made up of material and non-material things, products of human groups. A society is a group of interdependent people who share a common cultural and culture and feeling of unity. Society differs from culture in that societies are made up of people and cultures are made up of products. So think of the culture as everything around us. You know, the music, the restaurants, the schools, the churches, the synagogues, whatever it may be. And the society is the people who live in it and share in that culture. All cultures share certain things like technology, which can be anything from a shovel to a computer, symbols like a flag or a religious symbol, a language, it could be one or more languages, values, things that we think are important, and norms, the way we're expected to behave and treat each other and engage in our life. So it takes us back here, number 2, and back into culture. It goes into physical products. Number 3, known as material culture. That could be our cars, our books, our buildings, our clothes, our computers, and even our cooking utensils. Abstract products, called non-material culture, number 4, is our belief system, our families, our ideas, our language, our political and economic system, rules, skills, and work practices. Okay, so hopefully you're getting a feel here for what culture is all about and society is all about. I had to do a little question here. What is the difference between a society and a culture? Culture is the shared products of human groups. A society is a group of interdependent people who share a common culture. Okay, components of culture. We got technology. That's the objects and the rules for using them. We got our any tool and its usage, any rules that make up use of an object illegal. So yeah, some things are illegal. You can't own a machine gun in most cases, with rare exception. We have cars where you're supposed to get licenses for your cars, both to drive them and put a license on the car. We have our houses. We have our schools. We have religious buildings. We have all kinds of things like that. Symbols, the basis of human culture, any word, gestures, images. Different cultures use different symbols. So some of the most common, popular, big ones would be like the American flag for our country. If you're a Christian, it'd be a cross. If you are Jewish, it'd be a Star of David. If you're a Muslim, it'd be a crescent. I'm not sure other religions, but I'm sure they all got their own symbols. So different cultures use different symbols. Language, number 9. Organization of written or spoken symbols into a standardized system can be used to express any idea. I'm quite amazed at all the languages there are in the world and how people communicate with them all. One thing I learned when I was in college is not all languages have a written version. There are many languages in the world where it's only oral. So there's no alphabet, there's no writing it down. People have tried taking like our alphabet and turning their language into something you could write. So there has been some of that going on over the decades. But yeah, language is quite interesting how that works. Values, number 10. Values are shared beliefs. They distinguish between good and bad, right and wrong, desirable and undesirable. A group's values help determine character and culture. So some of our values that I think most Americans share would be we value democracy, we value freedom, we value our rights, we value our country. We think it's good to be patriotic. We value honesty, we value hard work. We value treating people well, treating people with respect, treating people as we would like to be treated, and so forth. Norms are shared rules of conduct in specific situations, and there's several categories of norms. And the most mild category would be folkways. That'd be something that's nice to do. You know, maybe don't spit in the presence of others, and don't put your feet on the table and things like that. You're not going to get in big trouble necessarily if you do them, but they're kind of nice things to do. You know, good behaviors. Take your hat off when you enter a building, things like that. Mores is where it's a bit more serious. People are not necessarily going to be against the law, but it's going to start getting a little more serious here. People may not want you to use certain bad language. They may want you to behave certain ways. They frown upon. I remember when I was a kid, it was not uncommon a parent might spank their child if they get out of line. Nowadays, I would say that's pretty much frowned upon. It's not necessarily illegal, but if I haven't seen in a long time, in decades, seen somebody smacking their kid in public, who's misbehaving. But that was quite common when I was a kid. I'd be in stores and some kid would start crying, and the mother or father would start spanking them. And at that time, that was considered not a big deal. And now, for various reasons, right or wrong, people look down on that type of punishment, even if they're not hitting them very hard. Many people view that as not the best way to deal with your kids. So that's a change that has occurred in the last generation or so. Laws. Laws is where we decide as a society and our government and our politics that we're going to pass a law about something. So if you do this, it's not just breaking a more or a folkway, you're going to get in some kind of legal consequence. So if you, embezzle money, if you lie and harms other people in a way, you can be charged with libel in some cases, or false accusations, or perjury if you're being in court. If you harm somebody, you injure them, you kill them, you steal, you break things, you damage property, all these kinds of things can break the law. You're speeding, that breaks the law. So we have all kinds of laws out there. So yeah, just to review, the key components of culture is technology, symbols, language, values, and norms. Now, number 13, cultural variations. Cultures can be very different from one another in many ways. So in other words, a lot of differences in different cultures. There are, however, certain features that all cultures share. These are called cultural universals. Variations exist between societies, but they also exist within societies. Subcultures and countercultures are examples of variations within societies. Sociologists must take a view cultural variations without bias, allowing each culture to be judged by its own standards and not those of another culture. So cultural variation, there are certain elements that all cultures share, but then there are some differences. What do we all have in common? Humans have the ability to meet needs in a vast number of ways. Ability only limited by biological makeup and physical environment. Ability leads to great diversity in many ways. Cultural universals, that'd be number 16. That's what all societies basically have. And there's a list that have been compiled of them. They include things like family, having some type of government, leisure time, arts and culture and music, having some type of economy and economic ways of trading and working and buying and selling, and using whatever technology that culture has. So those are universals. You're going to find that in one form or another in every culture. A subculture is a group that has traits with the larger culture, but then they also have their own subculture. It could be based on age, it could be based on gender, politics, geography, ethnic groups, whatever it may be. Subcultures are not anti the main culture. For example, if somebody is like Chinese American, they're American, they're proud of it, they're part of the American culture, but then they also maintain some elements of Chinese culture in their life. They might speak Chinese language at home, they might celebrate some Chinese holidays, they might eat Chinese food more than most people do in the U.S. So they're not in any way against the main culture. They're just also engaging in the subculture. And a lot of people do that. They do it for ethnic reasons. They do it for religious reasons. They do it for just interests that they join a group and become part of that subculture. And that's not a bad thing. That's just a culture within a culture. Now, counterculture is a bit different. Countercultures, they focus on really trying to be against the main culture, not necessarily illegally. Some are. There are some that join criminal organizations and that can be counted as a counterculture. But some are just like the Amish. They want to live separate. They want to be off the grid, so to speak. They got their way of their clothes. They don't engage a whole lot with people who are not Amish. They don't want electricity. They don't want cars. They dress in traditional clothes, and that would be considered a counterculture. Back in the 1960s, a lot of what was called hippies, where people thought we're against the culture of work and get a house in the suburbs and get married and have 2-3 kids, and they just decide, no, we want to grow our hair long and live on a commune and go against the main culture and do our own thing. And a lot of people did that for a little while, and then they end up changing and going back to the ways they probably originally were opposed to. Some stayed living like that their whole life and still do to this day. So that'd be like another type of counterculture. Response to variations. There's something called ethnocentrism. You're going to hear that term throughout your future. And that was when somebody looks at other cultures with a superiority view of their own culture. So they look at it, they judge everyone else compared to what their culture is, and they often look down on everybody else based on whatever their culture is. So that was common in the era of imperialism when Europe had colonies around the world in South America and Africa and Asia. And a lot of times the Europeans just looked down on all those local cultures. They said, well, those primitive cultures that, we'll just come in and take what we want and carve up their land and declare it ours and all that. And they obviously did not care about the local cultures or anything that was going on. So that would be an extreme example of ethnocentrism. Sometimes it's just on a mild case. I was on a tour of Europe once with a bunch of young Americans, and I was a bit embarrassed. Some of them were just everywhere we went, they just judged everything from their own point of view. If it wasn't what they're used to and what they would do, they thought was bad. They thought was awful, rather than give a chance to try to understand a different culture and different way of doing things. Doesn't mean you got to agree with everything in every other culture. It just means that, it's better to try to understand it a bit, at least from their point of view. So even if you don't agree with everything, at least you're, giving it a shot. And to be honest, there's good and bad in every culture. All cultures got really good things in them, and there's a lot of cultures that got some things in them that may not be so great. Cultural relativism. That's the idea that a culture should be judged by its own standards. So if you're going to go judge, say, a Middle Eastern culture, you judge it on the standards of that culture. If you're going to go judge the culture of Germany, you're going to judge it on the standards of Germany. If you're going to do the culture of Japan, you're going to judge it on the standards of Japan. Okay. Cultural change. There's cultural diffusion. That's a spreading of culture traits from one society to another. It happens all the time, especially in this day and age of travel and internet and music and movies. I've traveled to 28 countries, and American culture is pervasive in all 28 countries I visited. You find our movies, you find our music, you find all kinds of stuff. Also, in our country, because we're multicultural and we got people that immigrate here and we got influences from other countries, we have a lot of influence from other countries. So we get more influences all the time. Look how much we love Mexican food and Chinese food and all kinds of other things that come from other places. And then often we make it our own. We make our own variations of it and versions of it and stuff like that. Cultural lag is the time it takes for non-material culture to catch up to changes in material culture. So that's when how we live and how we work and how we do things catches up to material culture, which might be the internet and technology and things like that. Cultural leveling is a process in which cultures become more and more alike, and that's happening all the time. I always give the example of the airport in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, which I've been through numerous times over many years. The first time I went through it in the early 90s, it looked like a Dutch airport. I was in the Netherlands, that's Holland, the Dutch people, and it had Dutch language being spoken. It had Dutch signs all over, and then you had some English, underneath the Dutch, or maybe the second announcement they made would be in English or something like that. Last time I went through it, it was like being in an American airport. I saw Dutch written almost no place. English was everywhere. English was spoken everywhere. It was, I almost felt like I was in an American airport. And, for whatever reason, those changes are happening. Cultural diversity and sociology, the adaptive American culture. Our culture does change. Our behaviors, our values, and that's a good thing. Not too long ago, when I say not too long ago, meaning like 60, 70 years ago, in the American South, we had a lot of not just racism, but overt racism. We're talking separate schools and separate bathrooms and separate drinking fountains for blacks and whites and all kind of things that had gone on for decades and to them had been normal. Okay. And then, the changes occurred to get rid of all that. Not that things are perfect today, but, a lot of changes occurred. And I'm sure it took a long time for the people that were used to it, including Black Americans, to get used to it changing to where there's one bathroom that everybody can go in and one drinking fountain everyone can use. And Black Americans, African Americans can go anywhere they want and stay in any hotel and eat in any restaurant. It may sound strange today that existed in our country as recently as the 1960s or even maybe 1970s in some places, but that was true. Our culture changes in a lot of different ways. You go around some areas, you might find Spanish being spoken more. And some people don't like that, but stop and think about it. We got large parts of our country that, if you know our history, they were speaking Spanish before anybody was speaking English there. Did you know that? Florida, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, California. I mean, a lot of that was Mexico at one time before one way or the other we took it or bought it or stole it or whatever. So we had huge parts of our country that were Spanish speaking long before anybody was ever speaking English there. On top of that, for those that don't know, we are the number 2 Spanish speaking country in America, or in the world, in terms of population and people who actually speak the language. We have about 50 million Spanish speakers in the United States. So it's about 1 in 6 Americans that are Spanish speaker. That means they can speak the language reasonably well. And by comparison, Mexico's number 1. They got, 90 million people. Spain, which you might think should be right up there, is actually after us. I think they have about 40 million people. So we are the number 2 Spanish-speaking country in the world. And we got 1 in 6 Americans speak Spanish. So, Spanish, whether people like it or not, is basically our second language. And in a lot of places in the world, it would be officially a second language. And maybe in some states and counties it is. I don't know. But that is a big part of our culture and a big part of who we are. And I would like to learn Spanish. And despite my name that sounds a bit Spanish, I'm actually Italian and of ancestry. And but I would like to learn Spanish better. I know some, but I have no problem with Spanish being our second language myself. I don't want to replace English. I want everybody to learn English. Don't get me wrong. But it doesn't hurt to have, a lot of countries have 2 or more languages that people speak, and that can be a good thing. Um, Examples. It talks about adaptive American culture. It's got here Latino influence. Hispanics are our largest minority group. One interesting thing about Hispanics in America, most immigrant groups, if you look at the history, including my own with Italian, they came to certain areas. Like the Italians came to a lot of big cities, Chicago, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, places like that. And then eventually over the years, second generations, third generations branched out to other towns and smaller places and things like that. And that was true with Polish and Germans and Irish and a lot of groups like that. But Hispanic immigrants pretty much go everywhere. I mean, they go to the smallest towns, they go to the rural areas. Of course, there's a lot of work in the rural areas. For people from places like Mexico, they're in big cities. They're pretty much everywhere and pretty much integrate all over the place in ways that other immigrant groups haven't. So that definitely, and then look at how much the food is popular now in the U.S. That wasn't so true a few decades ago. And we got Spanish integrated. So that it has become a big part in our cultural diffusion, so to speak. South Asians, people from India, that's growing all the time. More and more people here, and they're doing amazing. From business owners to doctors and scientists and engineers, people from India, Pakistan, places like that. Their movies are starting to become popular, so that's becoming a bigger part in the U.S. So yeah, you got these stories with a lot of immigrant groups. You go back in our history, and a lot of the attitudes were the same in history. Like back when a lot of the early settlers were from England or Scotland or Ireland. Then when Germans came and a lot of them were speaking German, there were big parts of the U.S. that were all German speaking. There was even talk at one time of having German being our main language, and there were a lot of people like, "Oh my gosh, they're ruining our country. These Germans are coming here." Then a couple generations later, they're worried about all the Polish coming in. They're worried about Catholics coming in. They're worried about Italians coming in. And basically, no matter what your ethnic group is in the U.S., at some point, somebody didn't like you or somebody was concerned. And Native Americans, look at, they were here first, and look what they had to deal with over the years. Not just all these people coming in, but taking their land and oppressing them and so forth. And we've had a lot of stuff in our history we're not always proud of. But there's a lot to be proud of. No ifs, ands, or buts. We did this amazing thing. All these people come from all over the world with all their talents. They get freedom. They get democracy, get a better life. You get opportunities. You can come from the poorest peasant background, which most of us probably come from, and make it really good in our country and be treated well and be given opportunities. So we have a lot to be very, very proud of. I don't ever want to take away from that. So the American value system, over the years, we identified core values. Many of our core values are things like hard work, individualism, morality, humanitarianism. We care about others, personal achievement. We want to work hard, and so forth. The American values have not stayed the same over time. One thing that has changed, people nowadays, like they put here new values. People want more leisure time. They don't want to work 7 days a week. They want to have some time to enjoy life. We're starting to have a focus on physical fitness. Now, part of that may be in the old days, people did more physical jobs. So if you were out working a physical job 8 hours, you probably didn't want to go to the gym afterwards. Now people are doing more jobs where they work in offices and things like that. So they feel the need to get out and focus on physical fitness. Youthfulness. We've always been a very much focus on youth society, which it's good when you're talking about it from like, let's be healthy and positive in that. But we also sometimes forget that there's a lot of talent and wisdom that we is always going to be as good or better among older people. So we can't forget that. Self-fulfillment, the idea that no matter who you are, you can work hard, try to improve yourself. And, that's great. Environmentalism. Even the most conservative people I know want clean air. They want clean water. They just might have a few different ideas of what they think is best. But for the most part, most people, I think, care at least some extent about the environment. And of course, we have debates over what we should do about it and everything. But still, that's something that's definitely growing in interest, especially with the global warming. We've seen crazy stuff in Texas recently connected to climate change, and people debate what that is and what it means and what causes it. But it is happening, and we do got we should all be concerned no matter what our views are on that topic. Progress, just trying to make things better and make improvements. Self-fulfillment and narcissism. Self-fulfillment can go to an extreme, and that can cross into what's called narcissism, where it becomes all about yourself. Okay, it's all about me, mine, whatever's best for me. That's all I care about. Or I'm the best, or I'm this, or just focusing on very extreme selfishness. So you just want to make sure you don't go too far. Not, I mean you personally, but I mean in general, people in general don't go too far like this. And sadly, in recent years, we've had a lot of division in our country, and it's not been good. And I think a lot of people are ready for change. They're ready to not have so much division. They're ready to have cooperation. They're willing to have compromise. They're willing to have communications. The whole thing of divide and conquer and divide people and hate other groups, and that is not something that's really should be us. So no matter what side people are on issues, I think everyone needs to focus on that we're all in this together, and we all need to listen to each other and try to work together. That's a big trend going on right now in our country. Okay, that's a thorough review of this here, so you can use your notes in that. So hopefully everybody will do well on the test. So that's my review. I'll get the test together and post it here in a little bit. It's 10:05 as I record this, and I will, of course, I'll post this recording for you guys. And then I will get the test up maybe around 10:30 or thereabout, definitely by 11. So good luck with the test, and we'll be moving on to a new chapter next week. And and the things you didn't finish in class for the other assignments, make sure you get those done. So you can take the test today after I post it. You can take it tomorrow where it's officially assigned. And I'll leave the link up at least through Friday, maybe Saturday too. So in case somebody forgot or something like that, but otherwise sooner the better, then you can enjoy your Friday or Saturdays or whatever and do other things. And we got nice weather coming in, so that should be nice too. So starting to head a little bit towards spring. So everyone have a great day, great week, and C group, I'll see you in class tomorrow. And I really don't want to use class time tomorrow for the test, so I don't think I'm gonna. So right now, don't plan on the test for tomorrow. As a matter of fact, let's say that right now. We're not going to do the test in class. Do that on your own. Do it today. Do it tomorrow. I don't want to take half hour, 45 minutes when there's stuff I'd rather do with you. You can easily do this on your own. Okay. Okay. Take care. And I'm going to end this and post it here in a few minutes, and the test too. Have a great day.